So have you ever, set an alarm for 4:30 in the morning, stared up at the ceiling in the pitch dark, and just wondered why you were punishing yourself?
Oh, absolutely. The classic early morning existential dread.
Right. Because society has basically handed you this very specific playbook. Like, you have to optimize your morning routine, monetize your hobbies, climb the corporate ladder, and, hustle until you finally arrive at this promised land of
Yeah,
success.
we're constantly bombarded with this message that you can just mold yourself into absolutely anything if you just, exert enough willpower.
Exactly. But what if that entire premise, that relentless pressure to forge ahead, isn't just exhausting, but is actually like a fundamental trap designed to make you miserable?
It really feels like running on a treadmill where someone else controls the speed dial.
Yeah, totally.
And like the moment you hit a milestone, the horizon of success is just pushed a few miles further down the road, demanding even more energy.
And that sensation of endless, unfulfilling sprinting is the exact reason we're taking a deep dive into our sources today. We're looking at a deeply countercultural essay written in 2018 by an author named Su Feng.
It's a fascinating read.
It really is. And the title pulls no punches. It's called Pushing People to Forge Ahead is Doing the Devil's Trick. And our mission today is to pull apart his central argument that modern ambition and, success culture are fundamentally opposed to human nature.
Yeah, and setting the table for this requires understanding that this text operates on a completely different frequency than, well, modern Western or capitalist thought.
Oh, for sure.
The author's worldview is fiercely deterministic. He completely challenges the core idea of the self-made individual.
Right.
So I just want to clarify that our purpose in this deep dive is not to endorse his philosophy or adopt his societal views, but to impartially test drive his arguments. We're basically looking at human behavior through his startlingly rigid lens to see what shadows it casts on our own daily routines.
Yeah, because to even approach his theory on why hustling is a trap, we have to grasp his foundational premise about reality. He believes absolutely everything is predetermined.
Everything.
Yeah, he calls it the cosmic script. In his view, nothing is left to chance or human negotiation. The text literally states that the amount of blessings you enjoy, the specific achievements you unlock, the diseases you contract, and the sins you commit are all fixed points on a graph.
It's incredibly sweeping.
It is. He goes as far as to say that who you fall in love with and the specific people who will enter your life just to torture you are already written into the code of your existence.
Wow.
Even the exact timing and method of your death are locked in.
And the author extends this deterministic code well beyond the physical world and into the spiritual realm, too.
Oh, right, the spiritual stuff.
Yeah, he argues that whether someone becomes a celestial being or a demon, whether they go to heaven or hell, was decided long before they took their first breath.
So no changing it.
Exactly. You cannot simply manifest a new destiny by working hard. A person destined to be a beggar cannot, life hack their way into becoming a high-ranking politician.
Right.
And someone meant to be an obscure worker cannot force their way into being a famous singer.
It reminds me of, looking at the source code of a software program. If a program is written to be a calculator, no amount of typing enthusiastically on the keyboard is going to turn it into a video game.
That is a great way to put it.
It's just bound by its underlying architecture. And the author uses some very vivid nature metaphors to illustrate this biological and spiritual architecture, essentially arguing that we are ignoring our own source code.
Yeah, he leans heavily on agricultural and animal metaphors, because I guess they offer undeniable visual proof of his point.
What were the examples he used?
Well, the text argues that if you take a Chinese cabbage, plant it in the best soil, water it perfectly, and fertilize it, it will grow into a magnificent plump cabbage.
Sure.
But under no circumstances can you force that cabbage to become a lettuce.
Right, a cabbage is a cabbage.
Exactly. The underlying nature is fixed. Similarly, if you feed a sheep premium grain, it gets fat, but it never turns into a cow.
Yeah, of course not.
A giraffe naturally grows a long neck without needing to stretch, and a mouse is born just knowing how to dig holes. Nature doesn't require a motivational speaker to fulfill its purpose.
Following that logic, it brings up a massive friction point regarding human agency. Because if our roles are entirely fixed before the curtain even goes up, it suggests all attempts at self-improvement are just a delusion.
Yeah.
If I am cast as the cabbage, but I spend my entire life buying courses on how to be a lettuce, I'm not just wasting my time, I'm generating a tremendous amount of internal anxiety.
Right, and that internal anxiety is the bridge to his most controversial claim. He views this futile attempt to change our nature not merely as a waste of energy, but as an actively destructive force.
It's like doing actual harm.
Yes, this is the devil's trick mentioned in the title. The text equates the process of grooming average people to make massive fortunes to, teaching hens how to crow or demanding that bulls produce milk.
Right, or I think he even equates it to compelling a woman into prostitution.
Exactly. It is a violent imposition on a creature's natural state.
Because forcing a bull to produce milk isn't just confusing for the bull. It causes physical distress. The author seems to be saying that motivational culture is psychologically violent.
Yes, that's his core argument there.
He writes that the hidden underlying message of prompting people to succeed is literally, go to your death, work hard to die. Look, the grave is not far away, run to it quickly.
It's pretty intense.
I mean, he is framing the entire self-help and corporate hustle industry as a literal death cult.
And he actually provides a pretty harrowing statistic to ground that extreme assertion.
The Apple Daily one, right?
Yeah. He points to a 5-year span documented by Apple Daily where over 260 officials and corporate executives took their own lives.
Wow, 260.
Yeah, and the text notes the horrific methods, drowning, jumping off buildings, lying on rails, shooting themselves.
Oh my God.
And the thing is, society looked at these individuals and labeled them outstanding and highly successful. They had achieved the exact things the hustle culture promises will bring happiness.
But clearly, it didn't. So let's look at the mechanics of why that happens. Why does reaching the pinnacle of success lead to such a tragic outcome for these individuals?
Well, what's your take on it?
It makes me think of overclocking a computer processor. You can force a computer chip to run twice as fast as it was designed to, but it generates an enormous amount of heat.
Right, friction.
Yeah, and if you don't have extreme cooling systems, the chip literally melts itself from the inside out. These executives were forced themselves to run at a speed that just wasn't native to their hardware.
That psychological melting is exactly the cognitive dissonance the author is pointing out.
Yeah.
Because when you fail at achieving a massive goal, you can always tell yourself the illusion, I just need to work harder and then I'll be happy.
You still have hope.
Exactly. But when you actually reach the top of the mountain, acquire the wealth, become the chairman of the board, and you are still miserable because you are fundamentally a cabbage trying to live as a lettuce, you run out of illusions.
You've reached the end of the road.
Right. And the author asks this haunting question. If given a second chance, would those 260 people still strive so hard for a success that ultimately marched them to their graves?
Probably not. I mean, he argues that the more you possess, the more troubles and pains you will have. But we do need to clarify his stance on achievement itself here.
Sure.
Is the author arguing that success, wealth, and status are inherently toxic substances, like poison? Or is the poison generated by the friction of pursuing a life that doesn't align with your predetermined nature?
It's definitely the latter. The toxicity lies entirely in the friction.
Okay, so it's not bad to be successful if it's natural.
Right. The author does not condemn the cabbage for growing plump. If someone has the natural disposition to be a high-achieving CEO, then building a company is their authentic expression.
That makes sense.
The devil's trick is society constructing a singular, monolithic definition of success and applying it universally. It's the tragedy of taking a person who is naturally designed to find deep fulfillment in a quiet, simple existence and basically brainwashing them into believing they are a failure unless they conquer the corporate world.
The moment you accept that the peak of the corporate ladder is a dangerous place for most people, it really begs the question of what an unforced, successful life actually looks like.
Yeah, what is the alternative?
Right. If we strip away the societal pressure to perform, what is the author's baseline for human joy?
Well, the text provides a sharp contrast between performative success and uncurated joy. The author points to the image of a heavily disciplined modern child.
Okay.
This child is forced to practice skills endlessly, dress fashionably, and perform piano on a brightly lit stage to earn applause.
I could picture it.
He contrasts this with the image of a barefoot child happily playing in the mud.
It's interesting because society monetizes the child on the stage. There's a whole industry built around turning that child into a product of success. But society ignores the child in the mud because you can't package and sell mud.
Exactly.
The author is suggesting the raw, unedited joy of the mud is the authentic human experience.
And he grounds this in his own geographical observations. The text describes his time living in the Binka area of Zimbabwe, a place he notes was heavily underdeveloped.
Okay.
The children didn't have shoes or modern amenities, yet, under the moonlight, they would gather around bonfires among thatched huts.
That sounds beautiful.
Young people would beat drums, kids would jump and dance barefoot, thin dogs would bark and run through the crowd. In that visceral, unpolished moment, the author claims he witnessed true, unadulterated happiness.
Because it is a joy that isn't dependent on an outcome or a future milestone. It's entirely present.
Right. And he shares a similar observation from Vanuatu, a Pacific island nation. He describes entire communities spending more than half the year simply sitting in shabby, leaky houses or drinking tea in the shade of their courtyards.
It's hanging out.
Yeah, they aren't optimizing their afternoons or trying to launch a startup. They are just existing. And the author challenges the reader, asking, who can say that they are not happy?
Those observations perfectly tee up a classic parable he includes in the text, which highlights the absolute absurdity of our modern economic treadmill.
Ah, the parable of the fisherman.
Yes, a wealthy vacationer visits a beautiful seaside town and sees a local fisherman. The fisherman catches just enough fish for the day and then spends his entire afternoon lying on the bow of his boat, soaking up the sun and relaxing.
And the wealthy vacationer, whose brain is just entirely wired by hustle culture, is appalled by this lack of optimization. He sees a highly inefficient use of resources.
Right, so the vacationer decides to, mentor him. He outlines this exhausting 10-year plan. Catch more fish, sell the surplus, buy a bigger boat, hire a crew, build a processing plant, control the supply chain, and eventually become a massive, wealthy CEO.
Naturally.
And the fisherman listens to this whole decade-long plan and asks, and what would I do after I become a wealthy CEO?
And the rich man smiles and says, well, then you could finally retire, come to the beach, and spend your days relaxing in the sun.
To which the fisherman simply replies,
what do you think I am doing right now?
exactly. It is the ultimate exposure of the middleman we've inserted into our own happiness. We spend a fortune on high-end running shoes and expensive gym memberships, and we run on a treadmill until our knees give out, all to earn the physical right to sit back down on the exact same couch we started on.
Yeah, we manufactured decades of stress to buy the permission to relax.
When the relaxation was available on day one.
Exactly. And the author breaks life down into remarkably simple, natural phases to illustrate this.
What are the phases?
He writes that life is brief. You play in the mud during childhood, chase romance and play in your youth, work and love during your prime, drink tea and chat as you age, and finally, sit quietly and watch the flowers bloom and fade in your twilight years.
That sounds incredibly peaceful.
He argues that this natural rhythm is inherently a good life. We don't need to override it with a frantic pursuit of artificial milestones.
You know, understanding his view on this natural rhythm makes me deeply curious about his origin story. Did he just observe the fishermen and the bonfires and reach this conclusion intellectual?
Well, no.
Because this essay has a layer of anger, a real hostility toward the self-help industry that feels incredibly personal.
You picked up on that perfectly because the essay is deeply personal. The origin of his philosophy comes from a moment of profound betrayal.
Really? What happened?
Well, 20 years prior to writing this, the author was completely captivated by the very hustle culture he now despises. The catalyst was reading Napoleon Hill's funnest book, The Complete Book of Success.
Oh, wow. That is essentially the holy text of the 20th century self-help movement.
Exactly.
It's the literal blueprint for Think and Grow Rich.
Right, and reading it filled him with an intense, burning ambition to accumulate wealth. He bought into the illusion of control. But instead of ascending to the ranks of the wealthy, he was ruthlessly scammed.
Oh, no.
He lost more than 400,000 RMB.
Wait, 400,000 RMB. We have to put that number into perspective.
Yeah.
In the context of China 20 years ago, 400,000 RMB wasn't just a bad investment.
No, not at all.
It was an astronomical, life-ruining sum of money. We're talking about the equivalent of tens of thousands of US dollars in an era where that could easily buy a home outright. It is a catastrophic financial trauma.
And that trauma was the turning point of his life. He explicitly states that from that day forward, for over 2 decades, he harbored a deep hatred for success literature.
I can totally understand why.
Yeah, he realized that the book had planted a synthetic desire inside him, a desire that wasn't natural to his cosmic script. And in pursuing that fake desire, he was led directly to ruin. It was the devil's trick playing out in his own bank account.
But looking at the reality of the author's output, a paradox really emerges here.
What do you mean?
Well, after this massive loss, he didn't just move to Vanuatu and drink tea for the rest of his life. He wrote this incredibly dense essay. He works day and night to build his philosophical community, which he calls Life Genuine.
Right. He's very productive.
Producing all that material requires a staggering amount of discipline and drive. How does he reconcile his own intense productivity with his belief that pushing forward is a trick?
It's a great point, and he actually anticipates this exact critique. His defense relies entirely on distinguishing between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation.
Okay, so internal versus external.
Exactly. When people ask him why he works so hard, his answer is simple. I love it. No one urges me to do it. The friction we discussed earlier is completely absent here. He isn't writing because Napoleon Hill promised him a mansion. He is writing because the act of writing and philosophical exploration is the core of his predetermined nature.
So the drive has to originate from inside the house.
Yeah.
If you have to import the motivation from a seminar or a YouTube video, it's not your true nature.
Precisely. The text argues that natural drive requires zero instigation. Lovers of learning will organically seek out books. Those fascinated by technology will naturally tinker and study.
Right.
People who possess the innate disposition to lead and manage will naturally chafe at being employees and will step into leadership roles without needing a corporate coach to push them.
Which all sounds reasonable, but he takes his concept of innate disposition into some incredibly controversial territory, especially regarding morality.
He really does.
The text applies this strict determinism to ethical behavior, arguing that if someone is naturally inclined to seek the truth of the universe, they will become a saint.
Right.
But he also argues that if someone's nature is to steal or rob, teaching them ethics and morality is completely useless.
Yeah, this is the moment where his philosophy aggressively collides with the foundation of modern society.
For sure.
By claiming that a thief is simply born to steal, he is effectively neutralizing the concept of moral rehabilitation.
And this feels like a dangerous intellectual cliff. If we accept that a thief cannot be rehabilitated because theft is just their cosmic script, we are stripping away all personal responsibility.
It definitely sounds that way on the surface.
It essentially invalidates the purpose of laws, education, and the human capacity for growth. It sounds like a philosophical excuse for terrible behavior.
And your reaction is exactly why this text is so provocative. But looking at the author's broader argument, it's highly likely he is using the thief as an extreme, almost shocking rhetorical device.
Okay.
He's pushing determinism to its absolute limit to shatter our stubborn belief that we can manufacture fundamental change in other people.
So it's more about accepting people as they are.
Right. He isn't necessarily arguing for a lawless society. He is forcefully stating that trying to overwrite someone's core programming, whether trying to turn a natural artist into a hedge fund manager or a natural rule breaker into a saint, is an exercise in futility.
He is demanding that we stop trying to turn mice into lions, even when the mouse's digging is inconvenient or destructive to our neatly manicured lawns.
That's a perfect way to synthesize it. And to summarize this entire philosophy of intrinsic nature, the author leaves us with one incredibly potent metaphor.
Which is?
He asks, can a hen lay eggs if she has none in her belly? If she has eggs in her belly, can she not lay them?
Oh, wow. The simplicity of that image really cuts through all the corporate jargon.
Doesn't it?
If the ambition the egg isn't organically inside of you, no amount of late-night hustling, vision boards, or screaming at yourself in the mirror is going to produce it. You are just torturing the hen.
Exactly.
But if the drive is already there, you don't need to force it. The creative act, the leadership, or the invention will happen as a natural biological consequence of who you are.
It is a profound call to audit the sources of our desires. The author's absolute determinism, his belief that every illness and every failure is pre-written, might be too rigid for modern sensibilities.
It's definitely a lot to swallow.
It is. However, the underlying warning is a vital diagnostic tool for our current culture. We live in an era that demands we extract every ounce of productivity from ourselves, treating our minds and bodies like industrial machinery.
Yeah, constantly optimizing.
Right, and by constantly fighting our own nature to achieve a synthetic version of success, we risk walking ourselves right into that deep psychological misery he observed in those 260 executives.
We really have to ask ourselves, as we look at our calendars and our goals for the year, are we nurturing our natural cottage, or are we driving ourselves crazy trying to sprout lettuce leaves?
The author reminds us to respect the brevity of the human experience. We have a short window to play in the mud, to experience the vibrancy of our prime, and to eventually watch the flowers fade.
It goes by fast.
It does, and letting a self-help book or societal pressure rob you of that natural progression is the ultimate tragedy.
Synthesizing all of this brings a fascinating new lens to the exhaustion we talked about at the very beginning of this deep dive. The endless hustle might just be a symptom of fighting our own gravity.
I think so.
So I want to leave you with a completely different angle to ponder as you go about your day. We are rapidly entering an era where artificial intelligence and automation are capable of doing the ultimate hustling for us.
That's a huge shift.
Right. Algorithms can optimize supply chains, write code, and generate strategies faster than any human ever could.
True.
If technology eventually renders the human grind entirely obsolete, does it actually do us a favor? If the economic necessity to forge ahead is removed, does it strip away our last excuse, forcing us to finally confront our true nature?
That's a heavy question.
When the machines are doing all the hustling, will you discover that you were meant to be the ambitious builder all along? Or will you realize that you've just been a fisherman this whole time, desperately waiting for permission to sit in the sun?